Life moves fast, especially at a place like Stanford, where students are always off from one commitment to the next, trying to make something of themselves and better the world around them. We tell ourselves that these years of working non-stop without rest will be worth it for the outcomes, mirroring a broader societal pace driven by capitalism that has created a culture that values efficiency and productivity over all else. This leaves us with little room for slowness, stillness, or presence. Amid this rush, I found myself yearning for something grounding me to each moment. The people, places, and information I was interacting with. This desire led me to learn more about rituals. I was particularly drawn to the work of, and to create one of my own with my ceramics and woodwork, based around tea to share with others. For a year, I've completed research to create such a tea experience effectively. Han, a South Korean-born philosopher based in Germany, author of Non-Things, where he describes our modern affliction. We're today experiencing the transition from the age of things to the age of non-things. We no longer dwell on Earth and under the sky, but on Google Earth and in the cloud. The world is becoming increasingly intangible, cloud-like, and ghostly. There are no tangible things. I have witnessed the shift of the prevalence of technology throughout my life, from my parents going from flip phones and a single home computer to everyone in my family having an iPhone and laptop that we spend now over half of our days on. We have lost tangible things in our life like dictionaries, and where we once searched libraries, we now search the cloud. And I yearn for those days of those tangible things, knowing that even though they were less efficient, that they would ground us to the physicality of our world. I want to bring us all back down from the cloud through my tea experience. Han may say that anything time-consuming is on the way out, but I argue that time-consuming activities are also on the rise because people want what is scarce, and currently that is taking your time, being in the moment, and allowing yourself to interact with the real world rather than the digital one. I yearn to create experiences that are time-consuming but make you lose track of time. I think that is the sweet spot of life, where you are present and engaged with the world around you. Han helped me realize there was a need for my work in creating handmade physical goods to connect people with the physical world. In designing my tea experience, I leaned into creating an intentional space to return to the material, and as a result, to slowness and touch and meaning. I first encountered tea experiences in a scholarly setting during an introductory seminar my sophomore year that explored Japanese tea culture, Japanese gardens, and Buddhism. That class sparked my interest in learning more about Japanese tea culture, which has influenced the experience I created. In my research, I looked to the work of Dr. Patelka, professor of history and Asian studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, who calls these ceremonies highly choreographed gatherings at which art objects and tea utensils, ranging from priceless treasures to improvised stand-ins, are displayed and used. This form of tea practice has had a profound impact on social etiquette, notions of hospitality, art production and connoisseurship, and the value of tradition. I was moved by how much care goes into hosting tea experiences, mainly in terms of choreographing or designing an experience to highlight art objects and tea utensils, not just as something to be looked at or used quickly, but to be engaged with and appreciated throughout the duration of an event, particularly those celebrating art objects. I wanted to be able to do so through my own designed tea experience and art in order to bring people to the present moment and down to the physical world. Patelka went on to state how even the objects themselves carry stories. Collecting objects to use for drinking tea could function as a form of personal narrative, in which the collection metonymically represents the collector and a set of ideals. I agree that the objects we own tell certain stories about ourselves. You can see this most visibly perhaps by what someone dresses in daily, or as Petalka suggests, what vessels they might use to drink tea. For example, is it handmade or mass-manufactured, natural or synthetic? What matters to you more? I chose to hand-make all of my art objects and make them from natural materials, ceramics and wood, which I could source from local suppliers. I wanted my project to tell a narrative that I am a maker who values the natural form and world around me, and I believe that they do just that. Pilteko went on to note how Buddhist monks in particular relied on tea to keep them awake during the long hours of meditation. As someone who meditates, I found it compelling that tea is used to sustain the practice for long periods of time. I wanted my experience to be grounded in presence, and because meditation is a great tool to return to the moment, our breath, and ourselves, I wanted to utilize the practice in my tea experience, and decided to read more about Zen Buddhist philosophy, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Noted Zen, like the other forms of Buddhism, aims at the perfection or realization of personhood. To this end, sitting meditation, called Zazen, is a foundational method of praxis. Generally speaking, Zen cherishes simplicity and straightforwardness in grasping reality and acting on it here and now. Zen tradition values being in the moment and minimalism. I am not a very spiritual person, but I practice meditation often to be present and to declutter my mind. I want to share that feeling of peace with others in the form of a grounding sensory meditation to start my tea experience, so that they could be brought into the space I created more fully to be able to enjoy not just the tea I brewed, but the art that was holding it and surrounding it. Han, a Vietnamese Zen monk and author who introduced Buddhism to the Western world, viewed tea as meditation. Having written, "There's something very powerful and symbolic about tea. It's a chance to come back to ourselves, to relax, to hold something in the palm of our hands, which is in itself almost a reverent act. To feel the heat, to smell the aroma, is actually a very visceral experience. Drinking tea is meditation in disguise." However, I wanted my guests to know that drinking tea was meditation, no disguise. I shared with them Han's words because he helped me drink tea more effectively and mindfully alongside his many followers. And I wanted to share his teachings with them as well to help them in their journey through my tea experience. When making my tea vessels and other artwork, I returned to a framework I learned in a product design course on needle binding. As a product design major, I become accustomed to creating most effectively when I center the needs of users. It's how I approach nearly everything I make. I couldn't have done this project effectively without that mindset. I needed to deeply understand and articulate what my work was trying to do for my audience. Drawing from the work of Patnaik, I developed a set of design principles using the format he teaches. Design should, imperative verb phrase, so that, human-centered outcome. Inspired by this, I created 2 principles to guide my tea experience. 1. Design should support accessible rituals so that anyone can recreate the tea experience using meaningful, everyday objects, handmade or otherwise. That's why I invited my guests to learn how to whisk matcha, to appreciate the form and feel of the tea vessel, and to savor the tea while noticing how it made their body feel. I wanted them to be able to recreate this ritual at home, perhaps part of a morning routine to start their day grounded in presence. The goal was not perfection, but accessibility, to make a ritual feel inviting and replicable. 2. Design should honor slowness in both craft and experience so that making and drinking become moments of embodied awareness. I spent countless hours forming my ceramic tea set and wood table. However, I didn't rush it for 1 minute. I took pleasure in moving slowly and being deliberate with my choices. I have found that the only way to create good art is to take time and be in the moment, or else the work will look rushed and have errors, like the wood will have a chip in it or the ceramics will not be centered. The spirit of the object and the project as a whole would be lost. The same philosophy guided how I met my tea experience. I allowed plenty of time for guests to get settled into the outdoor space before we began. I had guests join me in a slow meditation too before we tasted anything. And as we did, there were moments of silence with our eyes closed, tuning in to all 5 senses and letting sensations come and pass as we enjoyed the tea. The experience lasted nearly 2 hours, yet it felt timeless. We moved as a group through the ritual gently, parting ways only when it grew dark. I held these principles in mind throughout the whole making process. I created a ceramic tea set: cups, teapots, plates, incense holders, vases, and meditation stones. I chose white clay with blue and brown glazes to evoke sand and water, earthy, grounding elements that remind me of the ocean and beach near my childhood home on the central coast of California. I also built a low wood table by hand. I chose to make it square to symbolize equality, because even though I was leading the experience, I wanted to be on equal footing with my guests and for them to feel like they belonged just as much as everyone else there, so they could be most in the present moment. Inspired by Jan's paper, Joinery and Structure, Cultural and Technical Comparison Between Traditional Wooden Framing Systems in East Asia and Western Europe, I chose cherry wood because it was the only wood he mentioned that is used in Japanese woodcraft that I could find easily available at local wood suppliers, which worked out well because it is also known for being very beautiful and strong as a hardwood. Lou also emphasized how Japanese joinery techniques are intricate, seamless, and often invisible. He explains how the absence of nails or glue results in a product that is not only functional but more aesthetic. As discussed earlier, you would want a clean and well-made table to represent you rather than a sloppy, rushed one. This time-intensive approach aligned with my second design principle, honoring slowness in craft. I made the legs of my table have seamless meetings at the corners and attached the legs to the table with an intricate technique covering up the screw connections with small cylinder wood inserts, like how you might see in Japanese joinery techniques. I also spend hours in the back of my table adding a structure that makes it so that the table has room to shrink and expand through different seasons, where it can change up to 1/4 of an inch, and this way it won't crack or warp in the middle due to weight after years of use. It is made to last, and I look forward to having it in my life for years to come. This reflects how I value goods that are made well and will last, showcasing my appreciation for the craft. The tea experience included 4 Japanese teas and 4 Japanese desserts, arranged for 4 participants at a time, including myself. Shoes were removed, phones were silenced, and we all sat cross-legged around the table. Before tasting, I led a short 5-sense meditation to ground each guest in the present moment, followed by us all lighting incense to mark the start of the experience. Each tea was introduced by myself with intention, giving time for everyone to observe and reflect on the flavors and our bodily experiences. I bought all of the teas from a cute store in San Francisco's Japantown, where I was recommended several teas and had the opportunity to taste test them. I ended up serving 2 different grades of matchas that were varying in quality from 2 locations in Japan. This was in an effort to showcase different flavor palettes of the different grade matchas. As part of making the ritual accessible, I also chose to serve 2 low-caffeine loose-leaf teas so that more people could participate regardless of their caffeine tolerance or the time of day they may choose to recreate the experience. For example, during the morning you might have more caffeine and at night you might want less. I began with a cold brew that was a delicate green tea infused with cherry blossoms that was light, floral, and very low in caffeine. Later I served a roasted green tea with a warm, earthy depth that was similarly gentle and low in caffeine content. Each guest ended up having a favorite. The variety was intentional. It aligned with my first design principle, to give guests room to explore and find something that resonated with them personally. I hoped that one tea might spark enough curiosity or joy that they'd feel inspired to replicate the ritual on their own. And it worked. Several guests asked for the names of the teas afterwards so they could order them and continue their own practice at home. I served desserts after each tea too. I started with the most popular dessert recommended by Kei Minamoto, where I bought the desserts, and followed it with lighter to heavier ones to keep the guests hungry and eager to try the next one. This was realized in the following order. I started with a white peach mochi that was soft, sweet, and fragrant. Next was a yuzu peel that was coated in sugar. Then there was a jelly that had a red goldfish and a muscat grape jelly. The goldfish was sugar. And then I served these desserts that were Japanese-style pancakes stuffed with red bean paste that looked like fish. Overall, the Japanese tea and desserts paired lovely together, and guests took their time savoring each sip and bite. It was exactly what I hoped for. One of the most meaningful parts of the project was watching others experiencing it.
I didn't realize until I slowed down how important it is to just take a deep breath and really ground myself.
It was very sensorial, from like the incense to the tasting to the sights and the sounds, and also just the feeling of being in community.
And one thing I really loved is Genevieve created these like beautiful touchstones or like worry stones that we can all take with us. Constant reminder through this stone that I'll get to have with me of the importance of slowing down.
All the different textures that are around, from like the grass to the wind and the sunlight and the wood of the table, that was very gorgeously done. And also just like being able to hold the clay in your hands as well. I think it's the tactileness really kind of draws you into being present. And I think the art of Japanese tea is one that evokes like a lot of mindfulness and a lot of beauty and appreciation of little details. And I think Genevieve did a really wonderful job of evoking that sense of both hospitality and the role between guest and tea maker, and also just inviting us into this little space of time where we could kind of slow down and appreciate this moment with each other.
Hearing how my work affected other people made the countless hours working on it worthwhile.
Today was great for me in terms of I got to share all the work I've been doing this year, all through the first quarter, doing lots of research in terms of Japanese tea ceremony and Buddhism and how it relates in terms of mindfulness and meditation, and extending that as well to my design education with forming the principles around anyone being able to replicate it with their own objects, and in terms of it being a mindful thing, me preparing the ceremony for everyone and delivering it, and making all the objects, from the ceramics to the woodworking, even to the flower decorating today and the vases I had made. It was really great to be able to share it with everyone and to be able to see it all come together, a year's worth of work. And I'm hoping to continue doing such work in creating rituals and ritual-based objects in the future. So, good start.
This project inspired me to believe in a future where even at a fast-moving place like Stanford, people want to make room for slowness, stillness, or presence. Life moves fast, but we don't have to.